I'd like to introduce next Jill Schlottbom, Global eCRM Manager from Henkel in Germany. Jill?
Hello, everyone. Also from my side, I'm very delighted to be the first time here on the eCom Summit today. And I already got inspired by a lot of roundtables and speaker sessions today. So I'm happy to introduce the next one, which will be Steven Silvers from Neustar, who will walk us through his experience in marketing analytics in a clean room. So handing over to you, Steve.
Thanks, Jill. Really glad to be here. And a little disappointed that my deck doesn't have any references to cheese in it. I hope that the rest of you will bear with me, even though there are no food products in the deck. We go to the next slide. So one of the things that we're talking about a lot here at the summit, and frankly, a lot in general, is privacy. The ability to collect and share data has been at risk for some time, and it continues to be something that we are working on and concerned about as an industry. But instead of saying that this type of data collection and sharing is dead, we've been looking for ways to use different types of technology to continue to allow the collection and sharing of data in a privacy safe way. So if we go to the next slide, we've been spending a lot of time at Neustar and again across the industry looking at things that are called collectively privacy enhancing technologies. Now, privacy enhancing technologies is not just one solution. There are a variety of different types of solutions that allow for the private use of data in support of specific use cases. And they kind of primarily fall into a couple of different buckets. There are data perturbing technologies where you still have access to raw data, but the events themselves have been changed or aggregated. There are another set of technologies where all the data is tokenized and you can do different types of analysis, but you can't quite join the data. However, we've found as we've looked in at the industry as a whole, the most of the technologies that work in this way, this tokenization technology, is really focused towards audience sizing, overlaps, and audience targeting, and they're not really suited for measurement. And so we've spent a significant amount of time looking at technologies that would allow for the detailed type of bottoms-up attribution that has been so important to our clients at Neustar. Next slide, please. And so I guess we've already covered the slide, but there are a variety of different types of technologies here, and we want to continue to invest in them. And so one of the ones that we've been looking at in particular, if you go to the next slide, is vertically integrated federated learning, which is a technique that we've been investing a lot in at Neustar that allows you to do federated learning without commingling data. And so we wanted to start to take a look at whether or not this type of technology would be a good solution for attribution, and whether or not it would allow for the type of detailed analysis that we've kind of been used to over the last couple of years when we could access raw data. Go to the next slide. So we wanted to prove that we could take a data set and run with privatization applied, and we could run the logistic regression type of models that we have typically run in attribution studies. And we wanted to show that not only that we could run it, but we could run it across more than two parties. So this is another issue that we've seen sort of in the industry as a whole, is that most of the PET and clean room tech is really focused on a bilateral two-party data sharing, which is pretty useful for a typical brand and single publisher use case when you're trying to do some sort of audience overlap and maybe a lookalike model. But when you're doing attribution, chances are that 2 parties is not really enough. A brand is going to want to do an attribution type study across multiple partners for a variety of different reasons. Most brands don't buy media from only one publisher. And so they would want to look at things like frequency, overlap, and performance across multiple publishers. And then that doesn't even take into account that many of the brands that we work with do not have direct access to sales data. And so if you were trying to do an attribution study where there was a conversion or some sort of sales partner that was providing the sales data, that you would have at least 3 parties in that case as well. So then you'd have the brand, the publisher, and the conversion data. And again, this quickly becomes super complicated. So we wanted to show that we could do logistic regression modeling across. With this case, we did 3. We were just trying to prove that you could do it with more than 2, since we hadn't seen it done, and we wanted to show that you could get the results similar to what you would get with direct access to the data while using the privacy enhancing technology. Again, in this case, it's vertically integrated federated learning, which we need to come up with a sexier acronym for. Right now, we call it VIFL. That's not gonna. It's not going to stick. It's not a very good acronym. We go to the next slide. So what we did was we created synthetic data sets. We created 3 synthetic data sets with 17 data features. And we did this to try to emulate what we're going to call MTA style measurement. It was not MTA. We don't think MTA, as it has been previously defined, is necessarily going to work in this new world. However, we're looking at MTA adjacent type of analytics. So attribution type analytics, bottoms up tactical analytics, but using slightly different methodologies. And so we wanted to show that in this 3-party environment where the data was never joined, it was kept in 3 separate buckets, and the algorithms ran in 3 different environments over the data that they had access to. We wanted to show whether or not the results of that type of analysis would be the same as if you had access to the raw data. And we go to the next slide. You can see that we were able to show that these results are almost identical. And so we haven't been able to prove the statistical significance of the difference here because we're still in the early stages of this analysis. But you can see here that the differences are almost negligible, and it's pretty hard to tell which was run on a single machine with all the data together and which was run on the 3 different environments using the lovely named VIFL. And so we're pretty excited about these results because we've been hearing a lot in the industry and even in this conference that this type of analysis is no longer possible. And we're very excited to show that it is possible. It may be a little more challenging, and certainly you still have to get the data into a format with addressable information on it to make it work in an environment without third-party cookies. But we have a lot of confidence coming out of this result that this vertically integrated federated learning solution's got a lot of promise. And so we're pretty excited about it. I think this is my last slide. Do I have one more? Okay, no, just a conclusion. So you can see here from this picture, there is a long road ahead. But we're pretty excited about the possibilities, and I'd love to take your questions.
Okay, thanks a lot, Steve, for this insightful presentation. So I would open it up for the audience as we still have some time left in case there are any questions. If not, then I would like to ask you, Steve, you were already talking about the long path to go for the future. What do you think is the most important thing to keep in mind for future progress?
So I think there are a couple things that people should keep in mind. A thing number one is that the models that we build today, the bottoms up models that we've been building for years, are based on third-party cookies. Those cookies are not omnipresent, and they do not represent a perfect model. And I think that if you are in search of a perfect model in this industry, you are very often going to be disappointed. However, if you accept that all these types of analysis are being done effectively on a panel, and you're going to make a projection from the data that you have into the entire population, I think it opens up a lot of opportunities. And so as we move into this new world where we have to do all sorts of different types of analysis, and we have to do a lot more data curation ourselves to make sure that we have rich data sets, I think it's important that we not lose sight of the value of the data that we do have, and we don't leave any data that is useful off. We want it all on the table. Don't leave data off the table. Don't make some sort of dogmatic decision and say this thing no longer works and that data is no longer useful. I think that's short-sighted. And so I ask all of us as we go through this journey, let's do the job that we all have in front of us in terms of making sure that we have as rich a consented data set as possible with as much addressable information as we can. And then let's figure out how to use technologies like VIFL to utilize and operationalize that data for the benefit of consumers in terms of building rich experiences, and also to do this type of ROI analysis and make sure that we're spending our money more effectively. I think all of this data, data is data, not all data is useful. But this data has been useful in the past, and we can be responsible with it and get the same value out of it. And I encourage everyone to just keep that in mind.
Yes, absolutely. Fully agree. Thanks a lot, Steve.